What if a single fighter jet could challenge the dominance of the Pentagon's most expensive and advanced aircraft? A plane that could offer comparable radar coverage, faster turnaround times, and a fraction of the sustainment costs. Saab claims its Gripen E, paired with the GlobalEye airborne radar, could create over 12,000 Canadian jobs while defending millions of square kilometers of Arctic and maritime airspace. Meanwhile, the F-35 program's Canadian acquisition costs have already soared to $27.7 billion, up from $19 billion just a few years ago. With billions at stake and NORAD's operational rules potentially on the line, this is more than a procurement debate. So what happens when a European fighter starts to tip the balance against the world's most dominant air power? Keep watching as we uncover how the Gripen threatens F-35 dominance and why the Pentagon is scrambling to respond. The U.S. tells Canada, buy the F-35 or else. That line sounds dramatic because it is. In mid-January, multiple outlets reported that Saab had formally offered Canada a package, 72 Gripen E fighters plus 6 GlobalEye airborne early warning planes, and that Saab said the package could create roughly 12,600 Canadian jobs through local assembly and sustainment. That offer landed while Ottawa was already re-examining its original plan to acquire 88 F-35 fighters, a program whose projected price tag has climbed sharply in recent audits. Put simply, Canada is being pushed between two choices that look very different on paper. One is a heavily U.S. integrated option centered on the Lockheed Martin F-35, a fifth-generation fighter that offers stealth and deep sensor fusion, but which also ties Canada into U.S.-led supply chains and software control. The other is Saab's package, a 4.5-generation fighter built to operate as part of a distributed system, plus a long-endurance AEW platform intended to extend Canada's radar horizon, and a pledge of Canadian jobs, factories, and long-term sustainment. That trade-off is where this story lives. Let's start with the baseline facts that matter. Canada agreed in the prior government cycles to buy 88 F-35s. The plan originally included funding for 16 aircraft, with the rest to follow. A 2025 federal audit and subsequent reporting pushed the program's life cycle or acquisition estimate up to about $27.7 billion from earlier estimates near $19 billion. Deliveries for the 88 jets were expected over a multi-year window. Now the debate revolves around the question, can Ottawa justify the price, and should Canada accept the industrial model that comes with the F-35? Saab's pitch is engineered to land politically, not just technically. The company publicly framed its proposal as a complete package, a fleet-sized Gripen buy plus 6 GlobalEye AEW and seaplanes, with local assembly in Ontario and Quebec, partnerships with Canadian firms like Bombardier or Bombardier-related partners for airframes, and promises of roughly 12,600 jobs. Saab's message, buy this package and you get capability plus industrial sovereignty, jobs, tech transfer, and control over sustainment. This approach is meant to appeal to Ottawa's main political goals, especially while trade tensions with Washington are rising. Then the U.S. reaction arrived in public form. The U.S. ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, told CBC News and other outlets that if Canada does not proceed with the full F-35 buy, NORAD would have to be altered, and Washington could be forced to fill those gaps with American fighters operating more often in Canadian airspace. Multiple outlets picked up and repeated that warning. It means that Canada's decision on which fighter to buy could affect which planes fly, who covers the costs, and who makes the important decisions in North America's air defense. That gives a lot of influence over just one purchase. Why did that warning hit so hard? NORAD works because U.S. and Canadian forces can operate together smoothly. They share radar data, link their command systems, and follow the same procedures. If Canada buys a fighter that doesn't fully work with U.S. software, communications, or maintenance systems that plug-and-play setup NORAD relies on, could break down. The U.S. says that could force changes in how NORAD operates. In other words, what started as a debate about buying jets quickly became a question about security, alliances, and national defense. And suddenly, the issue went public. Now, the technical and operational reality. The F-35 is a fifth-generation jet whose core design goal is sensor fusion. The jet's sensors, radars, and data links are meant to merge into a single, survivable picture for pilots and command systems. That gives it clear advantages for detection, stealthy operations, and sharing targeting data across complex networks. But the F-35 program also relies on controlled software pipelines, U.S.-managed mission data files, and sustainment paths that give the United States a lot of sway over long-term maintenance and upgrades. That dependency is exactly what worries some Canadian ministers and industrial groups. By contrast, the Gripen E is a 4.5-generation fighter built around low logistics needs and distributed operations. It offers a modern AESA-class radar, the Raven ES-05, an infrared search and track pod, and avionics geared for data sharing across networks. Gripen's design emphasizes rapid turnarounds, operations from shorter or dispersed runways, and lower sustainment overhead. Saab argues those traits fit Canada's geography, long ranges, limited basing, and harsh northern conditions where resilience and the ability to disperse matter more than producing the single most cutting-edge platform. Gripen also integrates with NATO standards like Link 16 and NATO-compatible weapons, even if it does not hand control of mission data to the U.S. in the way the F-35 ecosystem does. The GlobalEye AEW and seaplane is the other core piece of Saab's package, built around the Bombardier Global airframe and carrying Saab's Iri ER radar. GlobalEye is designed to fly long sorties and to provide a persistent radar and maritime picture over huge distances. For Canada, the practical effect is straightforward. You extend the radar horizon beyond what ground radars can see over the curvature of the Earth. You get better early warning for aircraft and maritime contacts, and you give fighters longer lead time to intercept. That persistence matters in the Arctic and over Canada's long maritime approaches. So where does capability stack up? If the goal is stealth and deep sensor fusion for contested environments, the F-35 sits at the top. If the goal is resilient, distributed air defense across long distances with domestic sustainment and a lower life cycle bill, a Gripen plus GlobalEye package looks competitive and even attractive. The hard truth is, both claims are true in their own lane. The choice is about what problem Canada wants to solve and how much sovereignty over sustainment it wants to keep. Money matters more than rhetoric. The federal audit that drove much of the political review put the program's cost estimate at about $27.7 billion, up from earlier figures near $19 billion. That is a large jump when Ottawa is weighing trade tensions, industrial outcomes, and the political exposure of buying primarily from a single U.S. supplier. Saab's job creation pitch is meant to change the calculus, turn buy decisions into factory orders, give provinces work, and fund a homegrown aerospace base. Those promises aren't trivial in Ottawa or in riding-level politics. When a bid says 12,600 jobs, premiers and MPs start paying attention. But job numbers need context. Saab's 12,600 figure is a headline number. Independent analysts break that down into assembly, sustainment, and supply chain roles. Some outlets that covered the offer reported about 9,000 jobs tied to Gripen assembly and another 3,600 tied to GlobalEye production. Those are still meaningful numbers, but Ottawa will want a clear contract-binding industrial plan. How many jobs when, how long they last, and what intellectual property or tech transfer comes with them before it bets Canadian industry on a new program. Governments know promises can look different once procurement contracts and offsets are negotiated at the program level. Politics makes this worse. Since the review started, Ottawa has tried to recalibrate its position on alliances and trade. New leadership in Ottawa has signaled a desire to diversify defense partnerships and to protect domestic industry. Meanwhile, public opinion data reported by some outlets shows more interest in Gripen, or a mixed fleet in provinces like Quebec and British Columbia, while conservative voters and portions of the defense community still favor the F-35 for strict interoperability reasons. That geographic and partisan split maps clearly onto votes and industrial leverage, and it makes any final decision a political hot potato. Legally and operationally, what would altered NORAD mean? The ambassador's comments are intentionally vague, but they point to a few concrete things: renegotiating rules about how often U.S. fighters can operate in Canadian airspace, deciding who pays for intercepts or patrols when Canadian readiness is reduced, and redefining command interfaces and data sharing requirements. Those aren't just memos. They are binding operational agreements with budgetary and legal consequences. In short, Ottawa would be choosing not just jets, but a new balance of operational responsibility and cost-sharing across the continent. Operationally, mixed fleets can work. They just add friction. Training pipelines split, maintenance depots must stock different spares, and mission planning has to account for mixed sensor capabilities. But mixed fleets are not unheard of. Ukraine, for example, operates a mix of Western and legacy platforms and has managed to integrate them operationally under intense pressure. For Canada, a mixed fleet could be tailored, keep a small core of F-35s for high-end sensor fusion and stealth tasks, and use Gripens for sovereign airspace patrol, intercepts, and cost-sensitive missions. That's operationally feasible, but it requires planning, money, and acceptance that good enough for the Arctic looks different from best in class for expeditionary warfare. Sustainment is the hidden bill. The F-35 sustainment model runs through U.S. systems that control mission data files, software baselines, and a long-term upgrade pipeline. That gives the U.S. leverage over software release timing, parts flows, and compatibility. Saab's offer puts sustainment under Canada's partial control if assembly and long-term support are set up domestically. That difference has strategic implications. Who can modify software in a crisis? Who can patch a mission-critical defect quickly? And who controls parts distribution when politics gets tense? The more Ottawa values that control, the more appealing the Saab industrial pitch becomes. Remember the cold weather question. Critics of the F-35 have said it struggles in extreme cold. In practice, Norway operates F-35s in Arctic climates and has adapted basing and maintenance practices to meet the jet's needs. That shows the F-35 can be made to work in cold, but it also proves the point that the F-35 requires heavier infrastructure and support to keep high availability rates compared to lighter, simpler designs. Gripen's simpler logistics picture is a selling point for dispersed operations and for bases that can't run continuous, high-cost depot maintenance. Rid the politics. Washington doesn't want to see NATO allies decouple where it lowers U.S. influence. From a U.S. policy view, a Western partner buying a non-U.S. platform at scale raises questions about supply chains, common training, and coalition logistics. From Ottawa's side, the calculation is whether the political and industrial benefits of a European partnership outweigh the cost in terms of closer operational ties to Washington. That's why the ambassador weaponized NORAD language. It's a bargaining lever built to shift the domestic debate. So how should Canada decide? 3 short criteria matter more than slogans. 1. Mission fit. Does the option meet NORAD and maritime surveillance requirements? 2. Long-term sustainment cost and control. Who will maintain the fleet, at what price, and with how much Canadian content? 3. Strategic alignment. What does this choice do to Canada's posture toward its largest ally and to its industrial base? If Ottawa scores those 3 honestly and weights them against political realities, jobs, provinces, public opinion, the outcome will follow. If you found this video interesting, drop a comment and share your thoughts on the Gripen versus F-35 debate. Hit like if you learned something new, and don't forget to subscribe for more updates on global defense, military tech, and insider stories you won't see anywhere else.